Millionaire invites ex-wife to his wedding to shame her, but she stuns him with an unbelievable. The sleek black envelope arrived on a crisp October morning, nestled between utility bills and a catalogue from Williams-Sonoma. Clara Bennett nearly missed it as she sorted through the stack at her kitchen counter, sunlight streaming through the bay windows of her Brooklyn Heights apartment. But the gilded edges caught her eye, and she paused, her fingers hesitating over the elegant script embossed across the front. Elliot Grayson and Sophia Reed request the honor of your presence at their wedding. For a moment the world seemed to still. Clara blinked, rereading the names. Her hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with a mixture of disbelief and irritation. Elliot Grayson, her ex-husband, the man who had once promised her the world before casting her aside in his pursuit of power, was marrying again, and he wanted her there to witness it. Her first instinct was to toss the invitation in the trash, but curiosity tugged at her. Clara sat down at the marble-topped kitchen island, the envelope still in her hand. She traced her fingers over the embossed letters, memories flooding back like a dam had burst. They had met during their junior year at Boston University, where Clara had been a literature major with dreams of becoming a writer, and Elliot was an ambitious business student with an eye for startups. He'd swept her off her feet with his charm and unrelenting determination. Clara could still picture the small Italian bistro, Trattoria di Monica, where they'd had their first date in Boston's North End. Elliot had been late, caught up in a meeting with his tech co-founder, but he'd arrived with flowers from a street vendor and an apology that seemed to erase the frustration. "I promise you," he had said over a shared plate of tiramisu, "one day we'll have everything we've ever dreamed of. You'll have the freedom to write your novels, and I'll make sure you never have to worry about anything." But that promise had come with a price. As Elliot's ambitions grew, so did the distance between them. Late nights turned into missed dinners, and Clara's dreams of writing were pushed aside to support his relentless pursuit of success. Their marriage had unraveled like a poorly tied knot. By the time Elliot's company, Grayson Enterprises, had secured its first multi-million-dollar deal, Clara felt like a ghost in her own life. The man she had fallen in love with had been consumed by his hunger for wealth and status. The final straw had come during a heated argument when Elliot dismissed her writing as a hobby that wasn't worth investing time in. When the divorce papers arrived, Clara had signed them without hesitation. She had walked away with little more than her dignity and a burning determination to rebuild her life. And rebuild she did. Clara poured herself into her work, founding Bright Horizons, a non-profit that provided literacy programs for underserved communities. Over time, her small organization grew into a nationally recognized initiative. Clara stared at the invitation, her mind reeling. Why would Elliot want her at his wedding? It felt less like an olive branch and more like a calculated move. Knowing him, it probably was. He thrived on appearances, and what better way to flaunt his new life than by inviting the woman he had left behind? Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from her best friend, Naomi Carter. "Naomi, brunch tomorrow? You need to spill the tea on that gala last week." Clara typed a quick reply. "Sure, and I have something even juicier to tell you." As she set her phone down, Clara made a decision. She would go to the wedding, not for Elliot, but for herself. She wanted to see with her own eyes the life he thought was better than the one they'd shared. And perhaps, just perhaps, she'd remind him that she wasn't the same woman he had underestimated. That night, Clara opened her laptop and began researching Elliot's fiancée, Sophia Reed. A quick Google search revealed dozens of articles and Instagram posts about the it-girl socialite. Sophia was stunning, with a penchant for designer brands like Dior and Gucci, and a flawless feed filled with exotic vacations and red carpet appearances. Clara smirked. "Of course," she muttered under her breath, but as she scrolled further, something about Sophia's polished perfection seemed hollow. Clara leaned back in her chair, her thoughts turning to her wardrobe. If she was going to attend this spectacle, she needed to make an impression, and she knew just the designer to call: Christian Siriano. The first chapter ends with Clara dialing a number, determination sparking in her eyes. "Hi, Megan. It's Clara Bennett. I need a dress. Something unforgettable." The steady hum of conversation and clinking cutlery filled the air as Clara walked into Bluebird London, her favorite brunch spot overlooking Columbus Circle. The chic interior, with its sleek navy blue booths and brass fixtures, was the perfect backdrop for New York's elite to sip mimosas and trade gossip. But Clara wasn't here for gossip, not entirely. Naomi Carter waved her over, a radiant smile lighting up her face. Her auburn curls framed her sharp features, and her emerald green blazer matched her vibrant personality. Naomi had been Clara's rock through the tumultuous years of her divorce, always ready with a bottle of wine or a well-timed reality check. "Over here, darling," Naomi called, raising her glass of Prosecco. Clara slid into the booth opposite her, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You always manage to make me feel like I'm walking into an episode of Sex and the City." Naomi laughed, raising her glass in a toast. "What can I say? I'm a classic Samantha with a hint of Miranda. Now spill. You said you had something juicy, and I've been dying to know all morning." Clara hesitated, glancing at the menu before setting it down. She reached into her purse and pulled out the sleek black invitation, sliding it across the table. Naomi's eyes widened as she picked it up. "Elliot," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough to draw a few curious glances. "That smug bastard invited you to his wedding. What's his game?" Clara shrugged, leaning back in her seat. "I've been trying to figure that out myself. He doesn't do anything without a reason." Naomi's eyes narrowed as she scanned the invitation. "Sophia Reed? Isn't she that socialite who hosted that charity gala at the plaza last year? I remember reading about her in Vogue. Looks like Elliot's trying to upgrade his image." Clara smirked, though there was no humor in it. "It's not like he needs to. His company's valuation hit the billions last year. He's got everything he ever wanted: money, power, a trophy fiancé. And now he wants me to see it." Naomi set the invitation down with a sharp tap. "So what are you going to do? Ignore it? Send a strongly worded letter? Hire a skywriter to tell him to go to hell?" "I'm going," Clara said, her voice calm but firm. Naomi blinked, momentarily stunned. "You're serious?" Clara nodded. "It's not about him. It's about me. I need to see for myself that I'm past all of it, that he doesn't have power over me anymore. Besides—" She paused, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "I wouldn't mind showing him what he gave up." Naomi leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Now that's the Clara I know. Okay, if you're going to do this, you need to go all in. No half measures. What's the plan?" The two women spent the next hour crafting a strategy that felt more like preparing for a battle than attending a wedding. Naomi sipped her Prosecco thoughtfully as Clara outlined her ideas. "First," Clara began, "I need a dress. Not just any dress. A showstopper. I'm thinking Christian Siriano, or maybe something custom from Oscar de la Renta." Naomi nodded approvingly. "Good start. You need to remind everyone in that room, including Elliot, that you're a force to be reckoned with." "Second," Clara continued, "I'll arrive with someone, not to make Elliot jealous. That's not the point. But to show him that I've moved on, that I'm not dwelling on the past." Naomi arched an eyebrow. "Anyone in mind?" Clara hesitated. She thought of James Gallagher, the charismatic business tycoon she'd met at a fundraiser last year. They had shared a few dinners, but she had kept things light. James was magnetic, charming, and, most importantly, respected. "I might have someone," Clara admitted, her cheeks flushing slightly. Naomi leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "James Gallagher? Please tell me it's James Gallagher." Clara rolled her eyes, though she couldn't suppress a smile. "We'll see." "Perfect. And the final step?" Naomi asked, gesturing for the waiter to bring another round of drinks. Clara's expression turned serious. I need to be prepared for whatever Elliot throws my way. This isn't just a wedding, it's a stage. He'll want to show off, to prove that he's won. But I'm not playing that game. I'm showing up for me, for the woman I've become. Naomi reached across the table and squeezed Clara's hand. You've already won, Clara. He just doesn't know it yet. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Clara scheduled a fitting at Christian Siriano's studio in the garment district, where the designer himself suggested a sleek crimson gown with a plunging neckline and intricate beadwork. This dress says power, confidence, and a touch of revenge, Siriano said with a wink as Clara admired herself in the mirror. Next came the details. A diamond bracelet from Tiffany Co., a pair of Christian Louboutin heels, and a hairstylist appointment at Frederick Fekkai on Fifth Avenue. Every choice was deliberate, a reflection of the strength she had reclaimed since her divorce. As the day of the wedding approached, Clara felt a mix of nerves and resolve. She knew attending would stir emotions she hadn't faced in years, but she also knew it was time to close this chapter of her life, for good. On the eve of the wedding, Clara sat alone in her living room, a glass of wine in hand. The crimson gown hung nearby, a symbol of the woman she had become. She thought about Elliot, about the life they had shared and the one she had built without him. Her phone buzzed with a message from James. Looking forward to tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 3. Clara smiled, a sense of calm settling over her. She wasn't walking into Elliot's wedding as a scorned ex-wife. She was walking in as Clara Bennett, strong, successful, and unshakable. The chapter closes with Clara standing before her bedroom mirror, holding her head high as she whispers to herself, "This time, I'm writing my own story." This chapter builds the emotional tension and sets the stage for the dramatic confrontation to come, while delving into Clara's motivations and preparations in vivid, realistic detail. The morning of the wedding dawned with a pale, wintry sun breaking through the clouds. Clara stood at her bedroom window, gazing out over the Manhattan skyline. The city pulsed with its usual energy, but for Clara, time seemed to have slowed. Today wasn't just another day, it was a moment she had been building toward since the day she signed her divorce papers. Her thoughts were interrupted by the doorbell's chime. Clara walked to the door and opened it to find Naomi standing there, holding 2 coffee cups and a mischievous grin. "Thought you might need a caffeine boost," Naomi said, stepping inside. She handed Clara a blue-bottle coffee cup, setting her oversized tote on the entryway bench. "You know me too well," Clara said, taking a sip and sighing. The warmth of the coffee settled her nerves, if only slightly. Naomi surveyed the apartment, her sharp eyes catching the crimson gown draped carefully over a chair. "Wow," she said, running her fingers lightly over the intricate beadwork. "This is a statement. You're going to turn heads." "That's the idea," Clara replied with a wry smile. "But it's not just about appearances. It's about showing myself that I'm not afraid of the past." Naomi nodded, her expression softening. "You've come so far, Clara. Just remember, this day isn't about him. It's about you." By mid-afternoon, Clara was ready. She stepped into the heels, feeling a surge of confidence as she smoothed down the fabric of the gown. Naomi had left earlier, promising to text updates from the venue. Clara's phone buzzed with a message from James Gallagher. "James, outside whenever you're ready. Take your time, no rush." Clara glanced at herself in the mirror one last time. Her makeup was flawless, a blend of subtle glamour that enhanced her natural beauty. Her hair, styled in soft waves, cascaded over one shoulder. She wasn't just dressed for a wedding, she was dressed for battle. Downstairs, James waited beside his sleek black Mercedes Maybach, looking as polished as ever in a tailored midnight blue suit. He greeted her with a warm smile, his eyes lingering on her as she approached. "Clara," he said, his voice low and admiring, "you look stunning." "Thank you," she replied, a hint of a blush warming her cheeks. "You're not so bad yourself." As they drove toward the venue, James kept the conversation light, sensing her underlying tension. When they pulled up to the Pierre Hotel, its iconic Beaux Arts facade glimmering in the afternoon light, Clara took a deep breath. "You ready?" James asked, offering her his arm. "Ready as I'll ever be," Clara replied, taking it. The grand ballroom of the Pierre was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the scent of white roses filled the air. Guests mingled, their laughter and conversation blending into a symphony of wealth and privilege. Clara scanned the room, her gaze landing on Elliot almost immediately. He stood near the front of the room, impeccably dressed in a tailored black tuxedo. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his confident posture exuded the arrogance she remembered all too well. Beside him was Sophia, radiant in a gown adorned with Swarovski crystals, her laughter bright but hollow. Clara felt James's reassuring hand on the small of her back as they entered. The room seemed to shift as guests noticed them, whispers spreading like wildfire. Clara Bennett, the ex-wife, had arrived, and she wasn't alone. Elliot's eyes found hers, and for a brief moment his polished facade faltered. He recovered quickly, but Clara caught the flicker of surprise, and something deeper, something almost like regret. Sophia turned, her expression slipping into something closer to irritation than welcome. She whispered something to Elliot, who gave a tight-lipped response before excusing himself and making his way toward Clara. "Clara," Elliot said, his tone carefully neutral. His gaze flicked to James, who stood beside her like a sentinel. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure I would either," Clara replied smoothly, "but I figured why not? It's not every day you get to see an ex remarry." Elliot chuckled, though the sound lacked humor. "Well, I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll enjoy the evening." James extended a hand, his voice polite but firm. "James Gallagher, Clara's date for the evening." Elliot's expression tightened as he shook James's hand. "Of course, I've heard of you. A rival in the energy sector, if I'm not mistaken." "Competitor," James corrected with a faint smile. "Rivalry implies I'm chasing something. I prefer to stay ahead." The tension between the two men was palpable, but Clara didn't flinch. Instead, she met Elliot's gaze, her voice calm. "You've done well for yourself, Elliot. Congratulations on everything." Elliot opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, a commotion at the other end of the room drew their attention. Sophia had spilled a glass of champagne, her frustration visible as she waved over a server. The moment broke whatever hold Elliot had on the conversation, and Clara turned away, her heart steady. As the evening progressed, Clara found herself approached by several guests, many of whom expressed admiration for her work with Bright Horizons. One guest, an older woman in an elegant emerald gown, took Clara's hand and whispered, "You're the real success story in this room, my dear. Don't ever forget that." Clara smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had expected this night to test her resilience, but instead it was reaffirming her worth. Elliot watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. For the first time, he saw Clara not as the woman he had left behind, but as someone who had transcended him entirely. Clara stepping onto the dance floor with James, her laughter light and genuine. As the music swirled around them, she felt something she hadn't in years: freedom. The evening unfolded in a rhythm of toasts, laughter, and clinking glasses, but for Clara it felt like moving through a carefully choreographed play where everyone wore a mask. The grandeur of the event, the shimmering chandeliers, the meticulously arranged white roses, and the glittering attire of the guests only heightened the feeling of artificiality. She couldn't shake the sensation that every glance in her direction carried a whispered question or an unspoken judgment. Standing near the edge of the ballroom, Clara sipped her champagne, the cool liquid grounding her. Beside her, James was effortlessly charming a small circle of guests, weaving humor and wit into their conversation. His presence was a steadying force, but Clara's mind kept drifting to Elliot. She hadn't missed the flicker of something in his eyes when they first saw each other. Regret? Jealousy? It didn't matter, not anymore, or so she told herself. Clara Bennett. The voice was smooth, practiced, and unmistakably familiar. Clara turned to find Elliot standing a few feet away, holding a glass of bourbon. His expression was unreadable, but his posture carried the confidence of a man used to commanding attention. "Elliot," she replied, her voice calm. "Enjoying your big day?" He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "It's been a memorable evening. I wasn't expecting you to come." "You invited me," Clara pointed out. "What kind of guest would I be if I ignored such a thoughtful gesture?" His lips quirked in what might have been amusement. "Touché. I'm curious, though. What made you accept?" Clara considered her response. She could have chosen something polite, deflective, but she decided on honesty instead. "To remind myself that I've moved on, and to see if you have." Elliot's smile faltered, just for a moment. He swirled the bourbon in his glass, his gaze dropping to the amber liquid. "I see you've brought quite the date. James Gallagher, of all people. Strategic choice?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "He's a friend, Elliot. Not everything is a calculated move." "Isn't it?" he countered, his tone softer now, almost introspective. "We both know how this world works." She tilted her head, studying him. There was something different about him tonight, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. But before she could respond, the band struck up a lively tune, and Sophia appeared at Elliot's side, her smile tight. "There you are," Sophia said, looping her arm through his. Her gaze flicked to Clara, cool and assessing. "Clara, I'm so glad you could make it. You've certainly been the topic of conversation." Clara met her gaze evenly. "I imagine I have." Sophia's smile widened, though it didn't soften. "Elliot mentioned you're running a non-profit now. Bright Horizons, was it?" "Such noble work." "Yes," Clara replied, her voice steady. "It's been incredibly fulfilling. Helping others has a way of putting things into perspective." Sophia's expression wavered, just for a moment, before she recovered. "How wonderful. We should talk more sometime. I've been considering starting a foundation of my own." Clara smiled, her tone measured. "I'd be happy to share some insights, though I should warn you, it takes more than a name and a checkbook." The subtle barb wasn't lost on Sophia, whose grip on Elliot's arm tightened. "Excuse us," she said with a strained laugh. "We need to check on a few things." Elliot hesitated, his eyes lingering on Clara for a moment, before letting Sophia lead him away. Clara exhaled, the tension ebbing as they disappeared into the crowd. Later that evening, Clara found herself on the balcony, the cool night air, a welcome reprieve from the heat of the ballroom. The city stretched out before her, its lights shimmering like a sea of stars. She leaned against the railing, letting the quiet soothe her. "You were always good at making an exit." Elliot's voice broke the silence. Clara didn't turn, keeping her gaze on the skyline. "Some things never change." He stepped beside her, the faint scent of bourbon and cedarwood cologne wafting in the breeze. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. "I wanted to thank you," Elliot said finally. "For what?" "For coming, for showing me." He trailed off, his voice thick with something Clara couldn't quite place. "For showing me that you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." Clara turned to face him, her expression guarded. "Elliot, you don't need to say these things. It's your wedding day." "That's just it," he said, his voice low. "This day, this whole life I've built, it's everything I thought I wanted. But seeing you tonight, hearing people talk about what you've done, I realized something. You found meaning, purpose. I've been chasing, I don't even know what anymore." Clara's heart tightened, but she held her ground. "You made your choices, Elliot, and I made mine. I'm proud of the woman I've become." He nodded, his gaze dropping. "You should be." For a moment, They were just two people standing under the stars, the noise of the world fading into the background. Clara felt a pang of sadness for what they had lost, but also a deep sense of gratitude for what she had gained. "I wish you happiness, Elliot," she said softly. "I truly do." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and something that might have been admiration. "And I wish I had been the man you deserved." As Clara walked back into the ballroom, she felt lighter, as though she had finally set down a burden she hadn't realized she was carrying. James was waiting for her, his smile warm and steady. "Everything okay?" he asked, offering her his hand. "More than okay," Clara replied, taking it. They stepped onto the dance floor, the music swelling around them. For the first time in years, Clara felt a profound sense of closure and the freedom to embrace whatever came next. The reception was winding down, the grandeur of the event now muted by the subtle fatigue of its guests. Clara could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The bursts of laughter had softened into murmurs. The lively music had given way to slower, more reflective melodies. She stood near the edge of the ballroom, a glass of champagne in her hand, observing the room with a sense of quiet satisfaction. She wasn't a participant in this spectacle anymore. She was an observer, a woman who had come to witness the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, not for Elliot, but for herself. As Clara considered slipping away, Elliot approached her one final time. His bow tie was slightly loosened, and the sharp edges of his demeanor had softened, replaced by something more vulnerable. He gestured toward the quieter corner of the room, where they could speak without interruption. "I wanted to catch you before you left," he began, his voice lower than before, tinged with exhaustion. Clara raised an eyebrow but followed him, curiosity mingled with the lingering sense of closure she had found on the balcony. "What is it, Elliot?" she asked, her tone measured but not unkind. He hesitated, running a hand through his dark hair. "I've been thinking a lot tonight, about us, about what I let slip away." He looked up at her, and for a moment the polished businessman was gone, replaced by the young man she had fallen in love with all those years ago. "I never said it back then, but I'm sorry, Clara. For everything. For the way I treated you, for not appreciating what we had." Clara felt a pang in her chest, not of longing, but of bittersweet acknowledgement. "I've forgiven you, Elliot," she said softly. "I forgave you a long time ago. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying that weight wasn't helping me, it was holding me back." He nodded slowly, his eyes searching hers. "You're incredible, you know that. The things you've accomplished, the way people talk about you tonight. You've become everything I thought I was chasing, but I see now it wasn't about the success. It was about the person behind it." Clara gave him a small smile, the kind that held a world of understanding. "We both had to grow in different ways, Elliot. What we had, it taught me strength, resilience, and it taught me to believe in myself. I wouldn't trade those lessons for anything." He took a deep breath, as if letting go of something he'd held on to for too long. "Thank you, Clara, for being here, for everything. I hope you find the happiness you deserve." "I already have," she replied, her voice steady. "I hope you find it too." They parted with a handshake that felt more like a truce, a final closing of the door on their shared history. As Clara watched him return to the party, she felt no sadness, no regret, only peace. James found her soon after, his presence as grounding as ever. "Everything okay?" he asked, his tone gentle but inquisitive. "Better than okay," Clara replied, slipping her arm through his. "It feels like a weight has been lifted." He smiled, nodding toward the exit. "Shall we?" As they left the ballroom, the cool night air greeted them, crisp and refreshing after the heat and noise of the reception. The city lights stretched out before them, vibrant and alive, a reminder that life always moved forward. They walked in companionable silence to the waiting car, the hum of the engine blending with the distant sounds of New York. Clara leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, her thoughts quiet but content. The next morning, Clara sat at her desk, a steaming cup of tea beside her. The sunlight streamed through the windows of her apartment, bathing the room in a warm glow. She opened her laptop and pulled up the draft of her latest article, a personal essay for a prominent magazine that had asked her to write about resilience and reinvention. The words flowed easily now, no longer tinged with the bitterness or uncertainty that had colored her earlier drafts. She wrote about loss and growth, about the unexpected beauty of finding oneself after a storm. And as she typed the final sentences, she realized how far she had come. Later that day, her phone buzzed with a text from Elliot. It was a short message, uncharacteristically simple. "Thank you for coming last night. Seeing you reminded me of what really matters. I hope our paths cross again someday." Clara read the message twice, then smiled before setting her phone down. She didn't feel the need to reply. The conversation they had shared the night before was enough. Weeks later, Clara found herself standing in the lobby of a Manhattan hotel, waiting for James. They were heading to a gala for Bright Horizons, a celebration of the organization's latest achievements. When he arrived, his smile was warm and his hand steady as he led her toward the waiting car. "You ready for another big night?" he teased. "Always," Clara replied, her confidence unshakable. As they drove through the bustling streets of New York, Clara looked out at the city she had come to love so deeply. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, of the woman she had become through struggle, growth, and rediscovery. The chapter ends with Clara stepping out of the car at the gala, her head held high, ready to embrace the next chapter of her life, not as someone defined by her past, but as the author of her own story. The weeks following Elliot's wedding were a time of reflection and quiet transformation for Clara. Each day seemed to carry her further from the shadow of her past and deeper into the light of the life she had built. Her work with Bright Horizons thrived, her personal relationships grew richer, and the weight she hadn't realized she was carrying finally lifted. But this journey wasn't without its pivotal moments, each one a reminder of how far she had come and where she was going. It began with a simple errand. Clara was walking through the Strand bookstore, one of her favorite places in New York City, searching for a first edition to gift a friend. The scent of old paper and the quiet hum of readers flipping pages filled the air, a soothing backdrop to her thoughts. As she browsed the shelves, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Clara?" She turned and froze. Standing just a few feet away was Sophia Reed, Elliot's new wife. Sophia was impeccably dressed, her coat cinched perfectly at the waist, her makeup flawless. But there was an edge to her expression, a crack in her polished demeanor. "Sophia," Clara said, her voice calm but curious. "This is unexpected." Sophia's smile was tight. "I thought so too, but I couldn't let the moment pass. I wanted to apologize." The words hung in the air, unexpected and heavy. Clara arched an eyebrow, but said nothing, letting Sophia continue. "I know how I came across at the wedding," Sophia said, her gaze dropping momentarily. "I was threatened, insecure. You walked in with all this presence, and I felt small. I'm not proud of how I acted." Clara studied her for a moment before replying. "It takes courage to admit that. I appreciate your honesty." Sophia sighed, a hint of vulnerability breaking through. "For what it's worth, I think Elliot realized something that night. He hasn't said much, but there's been a shift. I think seeing you made him reflect on the choices he's made." Clara nodded, a flicker of sympathy passing through her. "We all grow in our own time. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sophia." Sophia looked at her, something close to gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you. And congratulations, by the way, on everything." As Sophia walked away, Clara felt an odd sense of closure, not just with Elliot, but with the entire chapter of her life that had revolved around him. The annual gala for Bright Horizons was one of the biggest nights of the year. Held at the elegant Cipriani Wall Street, the event drew philanthropists, corporate leaders, and public figures eager to support the cause of literacy and education. Clara arrived with James, her crimson gown from Christian Siriano, drawing admiring glances. The evening was a whirlwind of speeches, networking, and heartfelt moments. But the highlight came when Clara was called to the stage to accept an award for her contributions to social impact. Standing at the podium, Clara looked out at the sea of faces. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "This recognition isn't just for me, it's for the team that makes Bright Horizons possible, and for every child whose life has been touched by the power of education." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "There was a time when I doubted my ability to create something meaningful, when I felt defined by someone else's vision of success. But what I've learned is that true fulfillment comes from embracing your own path, no matter how uncertain it may seem." The applause that followed was thunderous. James met her at the base of the stage, his smile warm and proud. "You were incredible," he said, pressing a kiss to her temple. Clara felt a deep sense of accomplishment, not just for the award, but for the journey it represented. She had stepped out of someone else's shadow and built a legacy of her own. A few days after the gala, Clara received a package in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar. It was from Elliot. She hesitated for a moment before opening it, her curiosity piqued. Inside was a handwritten letter and a small leather-bound notebook. The letter was brief, but heartfelt. "Clara, I saw the news about the gala and the award. Congratulations. I can't think of anyone who deserves it more. I've been reflecting a lot since the wedding, and I realized there's something I needed to do. Enclosed is the notebook where I used to jot down my ideas during our early days at Boston University. Many of those ideas became the foundation for Grayson Enterprises, but I never acknowledged how much of that journey was shaped by your support, your belief in me. I want you to have it as a reminder that your impact has always been greater than you realized. Wishing you all the happiness in the world." Elliot. Clara traced her fingers over the cover of the notebook, memories flooding back. She felt no longing, only gratitude, for the clarity, the growth, and the life she had now. One evening, as Clara and James walked along the High Line, the city lights twinkling around them, James spoke with a rare seriousness. "You've been through so much," he said, taking her hand. "But it's clear you're not just surviving, you're thriving. I'm lucky to be part of your world." Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "And I'm lucky to have you in mine." Their steps slowed as they reached the edge of the park. Clara looked out at the skyline, feeling the weight of the past lift completely. She had faced the ghosts of her old life, and now she stood on the precipice of a future defined by her own terms. The chapter ends with Clara resting her head on James's shoulder, the city stretching out before them as a symbol of endless possibility. Chapter 7. Writing her own story. The early spring sun bathed New York City in a golden light, its warmth a promise of renewal. Clara stood on the balcony of her Brooklyn Heights apartment, a cup of tea cradled in her hands. Below, the world bustled with its usual energy, but Clara felt a rare sense of calm, as if the city itself had paused to reflect alongside her. She had spent the morning organizing her workspace, finally deciding to frame the letter and notebook Elliot had sent. They weren't tokens of love or longing, but symbols of the growth and clarity she had gained. Her office now held the physical reminders of her journey, a framed photo of her first literacy program ribbon-cutting, awards recognizing her nonprofit's impact, and a growing pile of drafts for a memoir she had tentatively titled Finding Horizons. Later that day, Clara sat in a boardroom at the Penguin Random House offices. She had been invited to discuss her memoir with their editorial team, who had taken an interest in her story after her gala speech had gone viral. The editor-in-chief, a poised woman named Rachel Hargrove, leaned forward with a smile. Clara, your story resonates deeply, not just the professional success, but the personal resilience. It's rare to find someone who can inspire with such authenticity. I think Finding Horizons has the potential to reach a wide audience. Clara smiled, humbled by the praise. I've always believed in the power of stories to connect us. If sharing mine can help others find their strength, then it's worth every vulnerable moment. As they discussed the book's direction, Clara felt a spark of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about sharing her past. It was about reclaiming her narrative and giving it a purpose beyond herself. A few weeks later, Clara hosted a private dinner at Le Bernardin, one of her favorite restaurants, to celebrate the formal launch of her memoir project. Naomi and James were there, along with key members of the Bright Horizons team. It was an intimate gathering, but every guest had played a significant role in Clara's journey. Naomi, ever the life of the party, raised a glass to Clara, who's proven that strength doesn't come from never falling, but from rising every time, and to her memoir, which I know will inspire millions. The room erupted in cheers and laughter, and Clara felt a lump rise in her throat. "Thank you," she said, standing to address the group. "I wouldn't be here without each of you. You've reminded me that life isn't about the plans we make or the setbacks we face. It's about the people who walk beside us." The following morning, Clara received an unexpected email from Elliot. The subject line was simple: "Thank you. Clara, I read about your memoir project, and I just wanted to say how proud I am of you. I've started my own journey of reflection, and I've realized how much I can learn from the way you've faced your challenges with grace. I'm also making changes in my life. I've begun mentoring young entrepreneurs, hoping to pass on lessons I wish I'd learned earlier. I owe much of that inspiration to you. Wishing you all the best in this new chapter." Clara read the message twice before closing her laptop. It was strange how life had a way of circling back, offering closure when you least expected it. On a bright Saturday morning, Clara and James drove to the Catskills for a weekend retreat. It was their first real getaway together, a chance to step back from their busy lives and simply be present with one another. As they walked along a forest trail, the sun filtering through the trees, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. James reached for her hand, and she smiled up at him. "You're quiet today," he said gently. "What's on your mind?" "Just thinking about how far I've come," she replied. "For so long, I let myself believe I was defined by what I'd lost. But now I see that every step, even the painful ones, brought me to where I'm meant to be." James stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression soft. "And where is that?" "Here," Clara said, gesturing to the world around them. "Living fully, without fear of the past. Writing my own story." He leaned down and kissed her, the moment filled with the quiet joy of shared understanding. As they continued down the trail, the trees opened up to reveal a breathtaking view of the valley below. Clara paused, taking it all in, the endless horizon stretching before her. For the first time in years, she didn't just feel like a woman who had overcome her past, she felt like a woman who had embraced her future. Back in her Brooklyn apartment, Clara typed the final sentence of the first chapter of her memoir. "The most important journey isn't the one that takes you somewhere new. It's the one that brings you back to yourself." She leaned back, a contented smile on her lips. Her story wasn't over, but she knew now that she was the one holding the pen. The novel ends with Clara gazing out at the city skyline, the soft glow of her desk lamp illuminating her face. Her story was just beginning, and the horizon was limitless. Clara closed her laptop and stood by the large window in her Brooklyn Heights apartment. The city skyline stretched before her, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. She held a cup of tea, her thoughts calm and content. Her journey had been anything but simple, filled with twists, losses, and rediscoveries. But as she stood there, she knew one thing for certain. Life wasn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It was about learning to create those moments, to embrace every high and low, and to keep moving forward with resilience and authenticity. Clara turned, her smile radiant, as if addressing a larger audience beyond the city's glow. If Clara's story inspired you, if it reminded you to embrace your own journey, no matter how challenging, then there's so much more we can share together. Stories have the power to heal, to connect, and to ignite something within us all. Hit that subscribe button now to join a community that believes in resilience, growth, and the beauty of second chances. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that they hold the pen to their own life. Let's keep writing, keep growing, and keep inspiring each other. Together, we'll create stories that change the world. The screen fades to black, but the faint echo of Clara's words lingers, because the best is always yet to come.